This webinar is made possible by the Sentio Marriage and Family Therapy Program. Visit us at www.sentio.org.
Hello and welcome to another Sentio webinar. My name is Jason Brand, and I am a deliberate practice senior instructor at Sentio. Today we are looking at motivational interviewing, Sentio's book that they published along with the American Psychological Association, and it is part of the Essentials of Psychotherapy book series. My name, as I said, is Jason Brand. Today we are back again with wonderful guest experts. Today we have Jen Manuel, PhD, and Denise Ernst, PhD. Welcome to you both. Hi, guys. Nice to see you. Okay, Jen is Chief of Psychology at San Francisco VA and an Associate Professor at the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at UCSF. She has been a member of the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, MINT, since 2005. She conducts MI trainings and coding workshops throughout the world. She has co-authored multiple MI behavioral coding systems, including the widely used MITI, which stands for Motivational Interviewing Treatment Integrity Coding Manual. Dr. Manuel's research expertise is in the implementation and evaluation of MI in frontline clinical settings. So you do wonderful work. Thank you so much again for being here, Jen. Denise Ernst has been a motivational interviewing consultant for over 25 years, providing training, evaluation, research, and implementation support. Dr. Ernst has helped develop and refine MI coding instruments, including the Motivational Interviewing Skill Code and MITI, the Motivational Interviewing Treatment Integrity Coding System. She participated in research efforts to enhance training effects, providing structured feedback and coaching for many professions. Dr. Ernst has been a member of MINT, the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, since 1997. Denise, appreciate all the work you've done. And how you both doing today?
Good.
Yeah, very happy to be here. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah. Welcome. All right. And we will leave 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers. Sentio has a counseling center, sentiocw.org for Washington State and Sentio CC for California. Services starting at $30. We see a wide range of clients, trauma-informed therapy. I'm really impressed by the counselors at Sentio, and I hope you will consider us for your referrals. If you like what you see today, and if you're interested in kind of doing a deep dive into deliberate practice and really learning it just in a very comprehensive way, we invite you to our Deliberate Practice Supervisor Residency Program, year-long program, accepting applications now. Can't say enough good stuff. I've been through the program myself and just think very highly of it. So just a quick bit of learning before we dive into the exercise that we're going to be doing today. I don't know about all of you, but for me, I have had many times the experience of listening to a podcast, going to consultation or supervision, and thinking about a client there, and then thinking, oh, I cannot wait to get back into the room with that client. I have the perfect intervention or thing that I'm going to say. And then you get in with the client, and all of a sudden, it just doesn't come out like it was in your brain before you were with the client. So that's what we are trying to, that's the sweet spot we're trying to hit here. Is conceptual learning is great. And as I said, conceptual learning is reading books, podcasts, supervision, even writing papers. But what we're really trying to target is procedural learning. And procedural learning is actual learning by doing. And so that's really what deliberate practice is about. And today we are going to have a chance to really get into this procedural learning. And Jen and Denise are going to help us to kind of really learn a skill. So, again, nothing wrong with conceptual learning. We just feel like in the field of psychotherapy and in counseling, that it's overprivileged. And so we're trying to kind of balance that out so that we get more procedural learning. So that's what this book series is about. There's actually about 20 of them written. And as you can see, motivational interviewing came out maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it's a wonderful breakdown of the skills necessary in order to kind of, really kind of get a good feel. How would you guys describe kind of in the book, kind of somebody who gets the book, what will they get out of running through these skills? Do you have a kind of language for that?
I think it's a good overview of kind of the foundations of motivational interviewing and sort of the specific skills. We really recommend that it be used in conjunction with the motivational interviewing text. The most recent edition is the 4th edition. And one of the things that Denise and I often note is like the book, I think, does a good job of teaching the skills, which are really important and key to MI, but there's also this thing called MI spirit, which, was something that we couldn't exactly get across in the book. And I think that is best described again in Bill Miller and Stephen Rolnick's 4th edition of motivation interviewing. Denise, anything to add there?
I would just add that from the very beginning in teaching motivational interviewing and teaching people, that we were really actually, even though we didn't call it that, we didn't know that we were doing deliberate practice. We've always known that you have to have, in order to really learn these skills, you need to have feedback, you need the repetition, you need the practice, you need to be able to learn to observe your own skills and make adjustments. And so I think that the book really supports that, where you, in breaking down the skills and then also reinforcing the practice about how much of this is a practice, because people tend to think, well, I already know these skills. And yet when you get in there and actually start digging in and practicing them at this level, there's a lot to learn. So
yeah, it's funny. I mean, I actually found, so here's the 12 skills in the book, and I found it a wonderful complement. Like, I actually didn't know that much about motivational interviewing before kind of diving into this and getting prepped for today. I've certainly heard about it. It's been on my radar. And I think what the book really helped me to see is there's always been for me this disconnect between motivational interviewing kind of seeming like common sense in a way. But what the book and like, well, why would you have to practice that? But what the book really showed me is the kind of the depth and humility and this way that motivational interviewing really kind of gets it. We don't often know what we think we know in terms of being therapists. And I think that has something to do with the spirit, and I think it also has to do with something the way that the exercise is broken down here. So can you guys talk a little bit about how you kind of how you got across? I think you did a beautiful job getting across these exercises, and to me also kind of linking it to the spirit. So can you talk about that a little bit?
I think there's two things. One is we don't know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know, right? And so I think the most common comment I would hear in training and in introductory MI trainings is, I already do this. I ask a lot of open questions and I reflect. And those are absolute skills in motivation interviewing. So in some ways, I think people are surprised by the simplicity of motivation interviewing. And at the same time, it can be a lot more complex because you're really listening on two levels, right? So you're thinking about using the skills, and reflecting what the client has just said. And you're also really thinking about like where you want this conversation to go with this eye on eliciting and reinforcing change talk, while still being very collaborative and empathic. And so it's kind of holding a couple things. And I think I am not a golfer, but or I'm not a good golfer, but I often kind of use this, like when you go out into the golf course and like you're trying to do everything at once, like I end up just hitting blades of grass, right? And so trying to break MI down into like learning these specific skills while building and thinking about, am I holding true this MI spirit component? I want to hear from Denise as well.
Yeah, me too. Denise, what do you think on that one?
One thing, in writing this and putting the book together, that chapter 3 for me is the most important chapter in the book. It's more important than any of the particular exercises, because it has to do with how to maximize your practice, how to maximize the practice of the skills. And the way I think about this, even the listening skills, learning to truly listen deeply, that this is about depth, and it's a lifelong practice. It is not something that you achieve and, okay, I know how to do it and I'm done. It's like, it is something that you can continually develop, build, enhance, grow more into, and you become more and more effective as you learn to listen at a deeper level. And you learn to take these particular skills and deepen your ability to use them. You learn to recognize more and more, draw on from what the client, stay closer to the client, what the client is saying. And you train, it's a lifelong journey to train your ears to listen for the kind of language and the more hopeful and more change-oriented language, because we're so well trained in listening for problems. And so there are so many issues and skills in this that are really, and that's why the deepening is one thing that people, even that they know motivational interviewing, if I could benefit from, and I actually have taken several of these for people that really are already deep knowledge, and it can really enhance their ability because it focuses on the depth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's such I think DP and MI, I think, go very, very well together, because with my trainees, I find that oftentimes they say, well, I already know how to do that. But you break down, first of all, I want to get to change talk and where you're headed with this, because that's going to be the exercise we're actually focused on today. But there's a way that you guys describe it and break it down in the book that really makes such a strong case for this kind of practicing and this kind of close attention to the details of how you're doing it. And so I love the way you guys talk about it. Today we're going to be doing reflecting change talk, which is exercise number 6, reflecting change talk. And there's this idea that I heard you talk about at some point, Denise, about cultivating change talk. And can you just say a little bit, what does that mean, cultivating change talk?
Well, it has to do with that deepening that I was just talking about, the deepening of the listening. When we are, first of all, the change talk is kind of a catch-all term for language that is moving in the direction of whatever particular change they're looking for, so that you're working on. And you're really tuning in to the actual language that people are using, and through good listening and oftentimes questions, there can be some questions in there too, and some of these other skills like affirmations and autonomy support, but you are looking to actively build and enhance that change talk and deepen it and broaden it and help people sort of hang a scaffolding around it. So the person can say, I know I need to change my diet. Okay, so they can that's a statement of change talk if what you're talking about is diabetes management or behavioral activation or whatever you're talking about. and they want to, they're stating something that they want to do. So what you want to do to cultivate that is to really flesh it out. What are your reasons for doing that? How can you tap into that internally to help that motivation? Because that is a sign of motivation, and you want to make it deep and strong, so that a person then saying, well, I know I need to change my diet because, it's really important for me to not let diabetes take my life. And I witnessed this with my mother, and I really want to maintain my health, and where you can actually, so you're growing it. You're growing the motivation.
I
Cultivate
see.
it.
Yeah. And so, okay. So while we're defining terms here, sustained talk, because that's going to become important for the exercise. What is sustained talk, and how is it different? Why do you want to do more change talk than sustained talk?
Take it, Jen.
Well, yeah. And I think that just to back it up a second, so motivational interviewing is specifically designed for people who are ambivalent about a behavior change, whether it's like exercising more or smoking less or whatever. So that's once someone's like, hey, I want to quit smoking, I may use some MI skills, but I'm going to help that person kind of think through a treatment plan. So really, we're wanting to use MI when someone's ambivalent. And by definition, when we're ambivalent about something, we feel two ways about it, right? I both want to quit smoking because I'm worried about the impact on my health, and it's really hard, and it's something that I've relied on. This is not true for me, but just, in a patient example, and it's something I've done for, 20 years, right? And that is ambivalence. What we know from, many, many research studies now on motivational interviewing is that the more that the client offers change talk, and the more that change talk is reflected when we look at treatment outcomes, the more likely that person is to be successful, right? And conversely, the more they offer sustained talk, the more a clinician reinforces sustained talk, we are not going to expect to see those same outcomes. And that makes sense, right? Like, if I go back to the smoking example, if I spend 20 minutes talking with someone about how hard it is to quit smoking, how they've tried to quit a number of times, they've never been successful, all the things they like about it, they're probably not going to leave that session feeling particularly motivated nor confidence that they can engage in this behavior change. And so we really want to tip the scales. We know that we're likely to hear both change talk and sustain talk when someone's ambivalent, but we really want to prioritize that change talk language. So sustain talk is going to be anything that goes in the opposite direction of behavior change, kind of maintaining that status quo. So for smoking example, it's, that they like smoking, that they've done it for so long, it's been so hard to quit. That's all the sustain talk. And we know that will likely happen, but we're not going to reinforce it like we are with change talk.
Great. Okay. I think that puts our feet on the ground for taking a look at diving in here. There's so many questions I want to ask you guys, but I want to get to the exercise here, because that's really what we're here to do. So, okay. So the exercise today is, as you can see up top, and there's 12 of these, as you saw on the last slide in the book, reflecting change talk. Now, each exercise is broken down into its skill criteria. And so basically these are the notes you got to hit in the song in order to fulfill the exercise, which is reflecting change talk. So here's the different criteria. The clinician replies to the client with either a simple reflection or a complex reflection. A simple reflection repeats or rephrases the client's statement. A complex reflection goes beyond the client's statement and add further meaning, emphasis, or emotion. And then number 2, the reflection only reinforces the change talk in the client's words and does not reinforce the client's sustained talk. And just real quick, guys, why put that there? Why put that in green? Why add that to the exercise, that you're not saying something here?
That we're not reinforcing the sustain talk?
Yeah, well, I mean, why put it there, and then, say, okay, mental note to the clinician, don't say this out loud, but, why have that as part of it?
What we're doing in these exercises is really trying to build particular muscles, right? So to really have them have the opportunity to hear change talk and reflect it, right? So that's not to say that we will never reflect sustained talk. And actually, like if someone's really ambivalent and they come in, I might, to develop rapport and build collaboration, reflect some sustained talk the first few minutes, right? Like you're really frustrated about being here. You're not sure why you want to talk to me about quitting smoking, right? So I might reflect that in order to help engage that person. What we want to do here is really have them, again, build that muscle, be able to hear and reflect change talk, because that's what we're really wanting to prioritize. There's other exercises in this book that kind of talk about, double-sided reflections, where we might reflect the sustained talk first and then reflect the change talk. And the idea here is we're steering the client towards a particular direction, right? So if I reflect sustained talk, the client is likely to follow that, right? So if I'm to say like, it's really hard for you to quit smoking, they're going to likely say like, yeah, it's so hard. I don't think I can do it again. If I say like, you really want to quit smoking, they're likely to say like, I know I have to, right? They're going to build on that. And so that's why we're trying to build that particular muscle with this exercise.
Got it. Okay, good. And it builds our muscle too, in terms of practicing saying the change talk. Okay, great. So here's an example. I'm going to read it. And then Denise, if you don't mind reading the clinician response, both the simple and the complex. So the client says, I've thought about talking to someone about my depression. I wish I felt better. I just don't even know where to start.
You've thought about talking to someone about your depression.
Or
you've been considering this for a while and you're tired of feeling this way.
Okay, great. Great. So we're going to try this out now. Now we're going to do it. If you did this if you have the book at home, the way that it's designed is that you sit down with another person and one person plays the client, one person plays the clinician. And if you actually have a third person there who would be a supervisor, they give feedback. If you don't have a supervisor or a consultant there, then the client gives feedback. But today we are lucky enough to have Jen and Denise here, and it would be too cumbersome to have everybody talking. So what we're going to do is put it into the chat. So we are going to give you a client statement, give you a little bit of time, and then you're going to put into the chat box. And again, this is, I think just the thing for today is just put in your best reflection. Don't worry about simple or complex. Just put in your best reflection. And then Denise and Jen are going to provide us with some feedback. Anything else before we launch into it here, guys? We're good to go? Okay. Let's give it a try. Client says, I'm worried about my eating. I love sugar and carbs, and that's all I've been eating. I've gained weight and I feel terrible. So following the exercise here, please in the chat box provide a reflection. Okay, they're starting to come in. I'll just pick one, guys. You've been worried about your eating and you feel terrible.
So that's a great simple reflection. So that's pretty much consistent with what the client said here, right? I'm worried about my eating, and at the end I feel terrible, and that's great. You're concerned with the way you eat. Concerned is, kind of the same word as worried, again, kind of great reflection there. Yeah, these are all great. You want to adjust what you eat because it's been making you feel terrible. That is a complex reflection, and it's taking it a step further. So that's a really great reflection because it's moving that person, this client, towards change in a different way. And so these are all great, but that one is what I would say complex and kind of nudging forward. Denise, what are your thoughts?
I agree with that. And I want to say that there was one I'm not sure you're worried about eating too much sugar and carbs to lose weight. That wasn't the one. I guess what I want to say is that the piece of change talk in here that if you're just looking strictly for the change talk is I'm worried about my eating and I feel terrible about that I feel terrible that I'm gaining weight. There's both of those in there. when you're picking up on one, it's not that you always have to reflect everything that's in there. Sometimes if you want to go deeper, you want to really focus on one level of it. So there's a tendency to want to kind of summarize everything they've said. But remembering, like, you're concerned about your eating and you don't feel good about yourself when you gain weight. There's like really two reflections in that. So you can go for and you'll realize that you'll get different responses, which if you use one or the other. So in thinking about this, that you might want to just go like less is more, and go where you really want to get the depth. So recognize the change talk and then just stick with that. You don't have to go you don't have to go further.
Yeah. I like what you said about recognize the depth of where you're going. So this is not just about reflecting just like a mirror, it's actually reflecting sort of where you think you want to go that's actually going to deepen this for the client.
Right.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. What about this one? It's obvious that you're concerned about your diet and sugar is your enemy.
If I were going to say sugar is your enemy, I would want to reflect that in a really tentative tone. I'd want to say, boy, it sounds like you feel like sugar's your enemy. Not because that's, I mean, it's a stretch. It is a complex reflection, but it's a little bit of a stretch, not that far of a stretch, but I would want to do it tentatively, because remembering, I mean, we don't go over all the earlier stuff about reflections, but when you're looking at deeper complex reflections, particularly, you are making guesses about what the client might be feeling, and part of what you're learning in this is not to be attached to your, not to think you're right. It's not about having the right reflection, because your job is to understand what the person is feeling. And so you can't, like, saying, this is your enemy is sort of like can come across, depending on how you say it, like you're telling the person that sugar's their enemy.
Yeah.
So you want to just pay attention to that, remembering that you are guessing and you're trying to understand what they think, not what you think about it.
Okay. Yeah, and it's sort of, I mean, MI takes this different kind of different stance. Is it wrong to say that it's less questioning? And is that right to say, or can you say a little bit more about that?
Go for it, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, the reason we use reflections instead of questions is that questions require an answer, right? You love sugar and carbs, right? Like that's just reflecting sustained talk. If I were to say that, you like sugar and carbs, and there's the inflection at the end, then there's like kind of like a waiting, right? Like you need to respond. The reason we offer reflections is, if we're wrong, and we don't need to be right all of the time, right? So if we're trying to really understand where the client is coming from, or being empathic, sometimes we might be a little off on purpose, right? We might exaggerate something or take it a step further. But the reflection sort of is like offering it. So like, I hear you, right? Like this is, you're worried about your eating, right? It's kind of like coming alongside versus the Q&A, which can feel a little like I'm in charge, right? I have a series of questions that I need to ask for you, and it matters to me what you say, right? Whereas this is like more of a partnership through reflections.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, great. Let's move on.
I want to
go ahead, Denise, please.
I want to respond to that last one,
please do.
because this is exactly, I hope you don't mind, Katharina, but this is exactly the reason why we focus this exercise on reflecting change talk and not reflecting sustained talk, because this is reflecting sustained talk. So you want to lose weight, but you're afraid you can't. and you're afraid you can't is pretty clearly sustained talk. I can't do it. And what you will hear from the client is, that's right, I've tried and tried, and I really love my carbs. So if you ended that, you want to lose weight, would be more focused on moving forward. So that's where I, just like Jen is saying, you leave it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's exactly the reason. It is so ingrained in us to want to respond to that, be empathic with that problem that the person is having, and just cuddling up to that problem. It is such a strong thing that we have going, particularly those of us who've learned to, be a counselor.
Yeah. And you see there the clarification, and this is why deliberate practice is cool, because you get right in there at that moment and you catch it. And I have to say, this idea that, of how much we cozy up to the sustained talk, I mean, it's like world is round kind of idea for me, because, this week I was just noticing how much I do that with my clients. And it really changes your view of things when you start to listen for the change talk versus the sustained talk.
Yeah.
So let's go to the next one. Somebody want to read this simple reflection and the complex reflection before we move along?
It looked like the ones that we've had.
Okay, wonderful. Let's move it.
Yeah.
Okay, apprehensive. The client says, the blackouts scare me. I know I should do something about my drinking. I really like drinking, though. I'd hate to give it up entirely.
So thinking through, just, it doesn't have to be a complicated reflection.
Mm-hmm.
The blackouts scare you. Great. The blackouts scare you, so you're considering doing something about your drinking. Great. This is all change talk.
That's great.
There are two reflections in that one that Renee put in. The blackouts scare you is one solid reflection that you're going to hear more about. And you're considering doing something about your drinking is a different reflection. So just knowing that you're putting two reflections in there, they're both change talk, but they're going to lead the conversation in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
You have some good reasons. Yep. And the piece here is that in MI, we're reflecting with this goal of moving that towards behavior change, but also not getting too far ahead of them, right? So we have to think about this one line in context. So if this person is like come in and said, 1 minute in, I may not reflect like you're ready to make a change, right? Because that's a little bit early. And I might start with like the blackouts scare you. You don't want that to happen again. You're concerned about that. Like you want to build up that change talk before you then move into like that behavior change of quitting entirely or doing something. And so just to put that in a bigger context, there's a trade-off. And Denise and I talked about this a lot when we were writing the book of like, there's a trade-off here with engagement. We want to keep the person engaged, not push too far ahead of them, and cultivating change talk, right? And so if we go too much for the change talk, the person's going to feel like we're ahead of them. So you really want to be attending to what are they saying? That's how we know we're going in the right direction. Because if you follow out, Katharina, I see yours is last, not to pick on you, but you want to do something about your drinking and the client says, no, I don't, right? Then you're like, okay, like I've gone too far, and say like, you're not ready to do something. And at the same time, the blackouts have really worried you, right? And you're going to retake it a step back and kind of reflect, and, backpedal a little bit.
Right.
Go
ahead, Denise.
I would say, as if I were the clinician, I would want, like Jen said, I would want to hear much more depth about what the person is afraid of. Why the blackouts are scaring them, because the motivation is there. Like you want to hear more about it. You've had some really, you've had some instances where you don't remember and you're not sure what happened. And, that's a really scary thing. And you want the person to be talking about that rather than jumping right into, you want to do something about it. And you want to allow it to deepen. but you got to stay there. So just stop saying the blackouts really scare you, to me, is the most potent. That's the most potent reflection you can give right there, is just a simple reflection of, so that the person expands on why it's scary.
Yeah.
And Katrina, I just want to jump in. Like, this is hard. This is hard.
This
That's
is
why
hard.
I started
It is
off saying,
hard.
like, we know more than we think we know, right? And that's why, like, people are like, oh, I know MI, right? I ask open questions, I reflect, and we don't know what we don't know, right? So, like, until you're really trying to, like, sit and hold this change talk piece and think about the sustain talk, it can be a lot. And so that's why, you know, we really tried to break it down, work on one thing at a time.
Yeah. And this is exactly what I wanted to get at today. I mean, so I think it's just, you know, that it's happening here, that we can actually see how hard this is, and how easy it kind of appears really easily. But it's not, it's really challenging. And, okay, cool. Let's,
No, I've got to point out these.
okay, please go,
these
Denise.
last two, because this is the same, it's the same issue. Like the one that Michael put in, but it ends with, you're not sure if you're ready. That's sustained talk. And you don't need it. And for that one, even if you just reflected, you don't want more blackouts, and just left it at that, instead of adding all the other stuff around it, that would be really powerful. And the one by Jaroslav, again, it ends in sustained talk. It's part of something you love so much. So you don't, for this exercise, you don't need that. You just need the blackout scare you to allow the person to expand on it more.
Very nice. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Let's take a look. The blackouts scare you, which is what we got. The blackouts were a warning sign for you. You worry about what might happen if you don't make any changes to your drinking. Very nice. And that really ringing in my brain, Jen, about you're not too far ahead, and you're not too much in the sustained talk. Very nice.
And also the difference, I mean, looking at the difference between you worry about what might happen if you don't make changes, and you're wanting to make changes about moving forward. So you're getting the wording that you use and where you are is that this is feels, I don't know, it feels really different to me, but of course we wrote these, but it feels different than you want to do something about your drinking. It's like there's a it's closer to what the person is saying.
Very nice. Great. Let's get another one in here. I keep saying I'm not going to look at my phone while I drive, but it happens without me even realizing it.
So I want to do this one, just noticing the trend. I want to take this is a complicated exercise. So what is the change talk here? The client says, I keep saying I'm not going to look at my phone while I drive, but it happens without even me realizing it. Where's the change talk? Put in the chat, the change talk piece. Just word for word what the client said. Yep, exactly, Michael. And then where's the sustained talk? It happens without even me realizing it. So what do we want to reflect here if we're only reflecting the change talk? It's that first piece. So we're ignoring the sustained talk, right? That's going to happen. We're going to prioritize. So think about that as we do this reflection. So what's going to be reflection here? If we're looking at what the criteria is, we're reflecting only the change talk and the client's words. What would your reflection be? You don't want to look at your phone when driving. Yeah. Great.
Great.
You know, I want to just throw in another thing here for this particular one about one of the ways that one of the things that's it. You're worried about looking at your phone, and you might be thinking, what is it that you want to hear more about that? You're worried, and thinking about what the person might be what emotion the person might be having is one way that we complexify reflections, as we call it, but that to help to deepen it is to get at some of the emotional content about the person being worried. So it's good.
So just that word worried makes it more complex.
Yep.
You're naming the person's not saying I'm worried about it. But they're expressing that in the way that they're, you can hear it, or you're concerned, or you're worried, or, it distresses you that you're doing this.
Right.
Those kind of things can really help the person. You want them talking more about that.
Great. I love what you did there, Jen. Can we do that one more on the next one? Just because I want to get one more in like that. Okay, great. You keep trying to not look at your phone while driving. It scares you. So there we have the scared, worried. It scares you to use your phone while you're driving. Great. Okay, so I think we covered that well. Okay. I always get sick from the flu shot. I don't want to get the flu, but I don't want to get sick from the flu shot either.
Yeah. So let me read each part here and then put thumbs up if it's change talk.
Oh, good.
In the chat. I always get sick from the flu shot. Thumbs up if that's change talk. Right. That's sustained talk, right? It's a reason not to get the flu shot. I don't want to get the flu. Thumbs up in the chat if that's change talk.
I'm seeing Lillian has a thumbs up here.
Good. So I don't want to get the flu is change talk. So the target behavior here, and this is a little complicated, is the flu shot, right? So whether or not I want to get the flu shot. I always get sick from this flu shot. That's a reason not to get it. That's sustained talk. I don't want to get the flu. That's change talk. But I don't want to get sick from the flu shot either. Is that change talk? No. So here, the only piece, and this is where I think it's Terry or Denise, you said, like, what we're doing here is we're extracting change talk from the jaws of ambivalence, right? And so here we have sustained talk, change talk, sustained talk. The only piece we're going to reflect here is you don't want to get the flu. So what would the reflection be here from this? Client says, I always get sick from the flu shot. I don't want to get the flu, but I don't want to get sick from the flu shot either. You're worried about getting the flu. Great. I think we can go see what our.
Okay, great. Yeah. I have to say that it feels so naked to have just have the and I guess because we're just so used to doing and padding it with all the sort of empathy around it, around the sustained talk. You don't want to get the flu, which we talked about. Your health is important to you.
I want to say something about that naked thing. What I really encourage people to do is, we think about empathy as only being associated with the problem. And there's been a lot of work, there's been work done about looking at empathizing with the person's hopes and their dreams and their desires. You're not giving up empathy to see them as more than their problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, we get stuck in thinking the only way we can express empathy is to cuddle up to that problem or put a lot of padding around it or do whatever. And that's not true. You want to really cuddle up with what the person, their hopes, their desire for change. That you really want to cuddle up with that.
Great. Okay, let's do one more before we get to questions and answers.
Giselle, it's just important that you're worried you'll get sick from it is sustained talk.
So do that. You don't want to get the flu shot.
You don't want to get the flu.
You don't want to get the flu. Sorry, you don't want to get the flu. Leave out the rest.
It's like taking away a reflex.
If you wanted to tie it to the target behavior, you might say something like, you're really, you're kind of wondering that if you don't get the flu shot, you might get the flu, and you don't want that. You might be able to link it to that, but you don't want to go to the sustained talk for this exercise.
Great. Okay. Oxy is the only thing that helps with the pain since I hurt my back. The doctors are telling me it's too dangerous to keep using it. They just think I'm addicted. You probably do too. No one believes me. I'm in pain.
Jen, you want to go over the change in sustained talk? I think that's useful.
Yeah, I think so too. And then I think we should actually go ahead, Jen.
Oxy is the only thing that helps with the pain since I hurt my back. Is that change talk?
I'm going no.
The doctors tell me it's too dangerous to keep using it. Is that change talk?
I see Lillian has a thumbs up.
It is.
Yes.
Good.
So change talk can come out from outside that person. My partner's really worried about my drinking, right? My kids want me to stop smoking. That's still change talk. So the doctor's telling me it's too dangerous to keep using it as change talk. They just think I'm addicted. That's concern, right? I would say that that's also part of that change talk. You probably do too. No one believes me. I'm in pain. Is that change talk?
What do people think? Change talk? I'm in pain. Renee says no.
Sustained talk, because it's a reason to keep using, right? This one's complicated. So what we're going to do here, if we're only going to reflect the change talk, what would we reflect here? I would reflect your doctors think it's too dangerous, because I think if we're saying it's dangerous can feel more like a warn. So really kind of reflecting they're concerned about you. They're worried about, again, bringing in those concern and worried are great to bring in when they seem true.
That's great.
You know, also, I think the one about it sounds like you think you might be an addict. One of the things that we really try to avoid in motivational interviewing is labeling people. And this person has said, I'm addicted, you know, they just think I'm addicted. And so if you reflected, you know, you're worried that you might get addicted or something like that, rather than saying you think you're an addict, because that kicks it up a whole another level.
Yeah, here's an interesting distinction. Your doctor's worried, you're worried when your doctor mentions it's dangerous is number one. And then this right below it, your doctor thinks you are addicted. So what about
that I've heard from this person that they're worried. So I would probably not bring in and again, it's like one bullet, right? But I would probably stick with the doctor's concerned. That to me feels more subtle and more true to what the client has said here.
So yeah, and along those lines, if you're going to do that, what you want to hear more about is the doctor's concerns.
What are they worried about? Yeah.
So you want to, you know, instead of asking a question, which is something that we could do, what do you think the doctor's concerned about? But you could also say, you know, just reflect that back. The doctor's, you know, the doctor's given you some, you know, talking to you about it, or the doctor is saying it's dangerous, period.
That's great. Okay, let's take a look at the answer.
Leaving off all the other stuff around it.
The doctors have told you that it's too dangerous to keep using Oxy. You'd really like to find a way to manage the pain without Oxy. Okay, I'm going to stop the share
that
here.
That was kind of a stretch.
Yeah, that's
kind of a stretch.
Yeah,
based on what we've been saying.
I don't think I would do. I would do that.
Okay, well, there we go. Deliberate practice in action.
I thought it must have been a good idea.
All right, we have about 6 minutes for questions. Do people have questions they want to ask to Jen and Denise?
I say one thing that you said, Jason, about it feeling naked to not have the sustained talk in there. And one of the things I think, you know, we often get into this profession because we want to help people, and it can feel like we're, you know, only reflecting the change talk. We're not hearing that side of them that is important. The piece, though, I think that is important to remember with MI is that uncomfortability that you hear when you're like, you know, your doctor's really worried about you continuing to use Oxy. That often kind of makes a little like uncomfortability. That's what motivates people to change.
Yeah.
right? So if you only reflect like the oxy is the only way you can manage your pain. If you only reflect the sustain talk, they may feel very supported. They may feel like you're a great person. They may want to come back and talk to you. They're probably not going to feel particularly motivated to make a change, right? And so that comfortability, and again, we're not trying to make them super uncomfortable, but that's kind of, it's uncomfortable because it's at odds with what they want, right?
Right.
And so that's, I think, why it's important to be not reflecting the sustained talk as much. I see
Right.
Renee.
And that's great. And I want to get to Renee's question, but also just adding what you said earlier, Jen, which is this is about ambivalence. This is about helping people with ambivalence. And we do want to weight it, it sounds like, towards change, which makes a lot of sense. Renee, jump in here. Tell us what you're thinking or what question you got.
Yeah, actually, sort of just what you're speaking to about the ambivalence piece. Like, I'm not a practicing therapist. I'm in the process of applying for graduate school, but
Welcome.
I definitely have like a friend specifically that's come to mind really in this session about who like says a lot of things that are really negative, and I have a hard time sometimes deciding what to do. And so usually I go with what we kind of were talking about, which is like sort of try to ignore the bits that are like really negative about the things that she says. But yeah, would you characterize someone who's doing that as someone who's ambivalent, or they're just focused on the negative? And like, how would you use it? I'm just like not sure she is actually ambivalent. Like, she really is just maybe has negative views on things, how to deal with
Could be, right? I mean, I think the definition of ambivalent is they feel two ways about something, right? And that's all, and it could be that they form more ways, right? Like there's more pushing them towards not doing a behavior change or whatever. So it doesn't have to be exactly 50-50, but both things are true at the same time.
And you know, I mean, in the last book, one of the last books that Bill wrote, it's, you know, ambivalence is the human condition. It's like, it's just a part of the human condition. We are going to be ambivalent about any of those things. And you can also, you know, get stuck into that. We see it all the time, how people get stuck in their negativity by just repeating it over and over and over again. And it can be really challenging. That can be really challenging, but you might listen for if there are glimmers, because we really hear that problem stuff, that negativity, we go right for it. And training yourself to hear what might be different in there, what could be a helpful.
Yeah, no, yeah. This
I have
really
oh, go
Yeah,
ahead. Sorry,
go ahead.
I interrupted you, please.
No, I'm just going to say, like, yeah, this feels very timely because again, this friend like literally was telling me yesterday that she's like, she said in like, she's talking about a grad program that she's currently in, and she said she was scared about it like literally like 5 or 6 times over the course of, but trying to think about like, well, what was the thing that she's like, she's still doing it, like she's still in the program, she hasn't like just completely dropped out. So there's clearly something there, and what is that thing that I could have reflected? Maybe would have focused on that instead of her saying she's scared. Like, could have reflected that, but I knew it wasn't going to be useful on some level. Yeah.
Well, props to you, Renee, for showing up here. And it's brave to, you know, come join this. This is not easy stuff to do, as we've been talking about. And I just one last question, guys. So Renee used this interesting word, ignore. Do you just ignore the sustained talk? And I wonder, what do you do with the sustained talk? I mean, you know, kind of internally. Can you say a little something about that?
We had, when we were coming up with the Mighty, which you mentioned earlier with this treatment fidelity tool, we had originally said sidestepped, and then we changed it to softening. And I think softening is better. So I think we don't want to ignore it, right? Because two things are true at the same time, right? Like, you know, smoking, like the person may still want to quit smoking and it's really hard. Both are true. But if we, again, only focus on why it's so hard, why they don't think they can do it, they're not going to likely feel empowered to make that change. So I think we try and soften it. I wouldn't say, you know, what was the hardest part of quitting smoking? Tell me what you don't like about quitting smoking. That would be cultivating more sustained talk, right? So we're not doing that. And we're acknowledging it without enhancing it.
Right. Okay. Well,
You know,
Denise, go ahead. Final
I
word
was
here.
just going to say one thing that I have been known to say in my classes is especially because a double-sided reflection where you've got both sides can be a really important thing to do. But what you end with is important. That you're using and in the middle is important. But also I tell people, you know, it's almost like one and done. Like you reflect the sustained talk and then the change talk, and then you don't have to go back and repeat it every time. But you don't want to do this, but you don't have just one and done. Now that, you know, of course there are going to be times when you have to do more, but just thinking about that, minimizing it. What you want to deflate the sustained talk.
Yeah, great. Well, Katharina says she loves the cuddling up. She loves that idea and she appreciates it so much. She wants another one. Thank you guys so much for your nice comments and for your participation. You were great. And Denise and Jen, thank you so much for being here. You guys just, I mean,
For having us.
walk the walk, talk the talk. It's just the way you guys do this is fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for being here.
This webinar is made possible by the Sentio Marriage and Family Therapy Program. Visit us at www.sentio.org.